100 miles off the Texas coast and 60 feet underwater, you'll find one of the healthiest reefs in the world. An expansive, vibrant community of fish and coral. A destination for experienced scuba divers and a research lab for scientists.
We're here to protect it, monitor it, do research.
This is the Flower Garden Bank's National Marine Sanctuary. Hello, I'm Anthony Yanez, Chief Meteorologist for KPRC2. Weather and science are my passions. So when I had the chance to see the coral conservation work being done here at Moody Gardens and in the Gulf, I jumped at the opportunity. Over the next hour, we'll explore the reef, learn about the threats that could destroy it, and witness the work being done both underwater and in the lab by people committed to saving and restoring coral reefs around the world. KPRC2 and Moody Gardens present Garden in the Gulf, a Reef Rescue Mission. Our dive trip with the team from Moody Gardens took place in July of 2024, and admittedly, a lot has changed since then. The Gulf of Mexico was renamed the Gulf of America by President Trump in February, and key people working on conservation programs lost their government positions with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. What hasn't changed is the mission of people from a variety of groups committed to saving coral reefs and our oceans. That includes some dedicated people at Moody Gardens who wanted us to see firsthand the work they're supporting in the Gulf. As the sun was setting one summer evening, our journey was just beginning. We arrived at the dock in Freeport, where the team for our trip was gathered and the gear was being loaded onto the boat. Oxygen tanks were carefully locked into place. We're getting ready for the dive in the morning, so we hook our BC up to our tank, and then we just put it in for the night, and so now we're all set. Wetsuits were soaked to remove any contaminants that could harm the reef. And colleagues and friends greeted each other, ready to collaborate on work that's critical to the survival of coral reefs around the world. It's important work and a pretty unique gig.
It's wonderful. I mean, I still can't believe I get paid to do it. I ain't mad about nothing.
Our travel companions included staff from NOAA, Texas Parks and Wildlife, and Moody Gardens, as well as others working to save the flower gardens.
Moody is here, and they're going to be doing some of their dive operations. We've got academic partners here that are going to be sampling corals. We've got media here that's going to be taking video. We've got lionfish hunters here to get some lionfish.
Introductions and a safety briefing.
Do your safety stop, get to the surface, inflate your BCD, and hang out with those sticking straight up. The currents have picked up a little bit.
And we're on our way. It takes a full night of travel to get to the Flower Garden Bank's National Marine Sanctuary.
I've been the captain on the boat for about 15 years. I have to admit, this is one of the funnest jobs you'll ever do. It's just the being able to experience the joy that it brings everybody going to the flower garden.
While Captain Ken piloted the boat, the rest of the team settled in for the night, knowing the next day would be a busy one. The Flower Garden Bank reefs are believed to have formed 10 to 15,000 years ago, growing from salt domes that pushed up rock formations from the ocean floor millions of years earlier. On an exceptionally clear day at the turn of the 20th century, some fishermen dubbed the reefs the flower gardens because the coral reminded them of flowers. In the 1990s, the reef received government protection. And in 2021, the sanctuary expanded to include 17 banks. It now covers an area of 160 square miles. We arrived at the West Flower Garden Bank around 7 a.m.
Make sure everything works. Here we are, and this is, an incredible adventure, but it's got a purpose.
We're here to do a combination of tasks, both research and resource management. The main task is to conduct our coral reef long-term monitoring, which has been going on since the late 80s.
Why all this work?
This is the healthiest coral reef that's left in this part of the world. Most coral reefs have drastically lost their coral cover. Flower Garden Banks has more coral than any of the other coral reefs combined in the Gulf and the Caribbean region. And so we're here to protect it, monitor it, do research.
What is the issue, not just for this coral reef, but all coral reefs around the world?
Well, when the ocean gets warmer, coral reefs get really stressed. So coral is actually an animal, and it does not do well with high heat. And so like us, you know, when we don't feel good, we can get sick, the corals get sick, and they stop eating. So when a coral bleaches or loses its color, it loses its symbiotic algae, and so essentially it's starving. And so when you have a reef that is stressed, it is starving and gets sick and then dies, and then isn't suitable habitat for fish and the other associated creatures.
So why is this coral reef doing better than the rest of the world?
It's a great question, and people ask that a lot. And I believe that it is very remote, and so it doesn't receive a lot of traffic. You know, there's no anchoring damage for the most part. There's no people polluting on the reef. But also it's much deeper than other areas, so our dives start at 60 feet. You know, you go to the Florida Keys, you can jump in the water and dive in 10 feet of water. So here, with the reef being deeper, it stays cooler down there. And so we are not bleaching, or the reef is not as stressed from the warm water, and it's able to recover faster when it does get hot. We have more coral than what most people have ever seen in their lives, since most reefs are in decline. But basically, you look around and all you see is coral. And that's what makes the Flower Garden Bank so special, is that we have such a healthy ecosystem, and then other charismatic creatures like grouper and manta rays and sea turtles flock to that because the habitat is still intact.
That is so true, because when you go down, it's just all you see is coral. Whereas if you go in any dive in Cozumel, Cancun, for example, Belize, you have patches and they're beautiful, but it's not widespread.
This is not a patch reef. The challenge here is that we are remote, so not all divers can get out here. You know, there's one recreational dive boat that comes. So it's so important for people such as yourself to highlight how important this place is, and for all the folks that are on this trip to take their experience back to their community and talk about it, and educate about how wonderful this is. And that's why Moody Gardens is here on the boat with us. You know, they're an amazing partner.
Visitors to Moody Gardens have a chance to see what the flower gardens are about without the overnight boat ride or advanced scuba training.
We are close to 100 miles offshore. It is not the easiest diving in the world, so there is a fairly high barrier of entry to be able to come out to this amazing place and see it in person. So a big part of that exhibit is to have everyday people that can go in, high school, elementary, whatever age kids, whatever age adults, come in and say, oh, that's my National Marine Sanctuary that's right off the coast of Texas. Even if I can't go out and see it in person, that's what's there. So it's one of those you only protect what you love type of situations. And so we've got that exhibit to promote the local ecology. We're here. We are amazing and fantastic, and you should come see us.
Still ahead on Garden in the Gulf, a reef rescue mission. The hunt to find fish that don't belong in the flower garden banks. Plus, we dive into underwater work that's decades in the making. And later, how Moody Gardens is growing hope for the future of coral reefs. You can support Moody Gardens conservation projects around the world by visiting them in Galveston or by making a donation to the Moody Gardens Conservation Fund. Learn more on click2houston.com/conservation. While the flower gardens got its name because the coral looks like flowers, coral is not a plant. Most of the time, coral is made of individual small animals called polyps. They have tentacles, a mouth, and stomach, and belong to the same class of animals as jellyfish and sea anemones. Hard coral live in colonies and are more often mistaken for plants or rocks because of their hard skeletons. Hard coral is what builds up reefs. Soft coral can be found in the same ecosystems, but it's made of polyps that don't have sturdy skeletons. A colony of soft coral polyps can look like grass, a bush, or a tree, and moves easily with the ocean currents. This stunning underwater world is extremely vulnerable. Coral populations can be quickly wiped out by rising water temperatures, disease, or pollution. Fortunately, as we saw on our trip, work is being done to make sure that doesn't happen. Our first full day on the fling was busy, with people ready to dive into the conservation work.
Yeah, you're ready.
I suited up to join them in their underwater office.
So this is the most important part actually of diving, because you have to know what your maximum operating depth is. so I know I can't go below 121 feet.
My dive buddy here at the Flower Gardens is Moody Gardens biologist Clayton Leopold.
I just always remember reg on right, and as long as you get that, you'll be good.
I'm gonna open this up a little bit. So it's filling it up. Make sure everything works. 2,700 PSI. So that's how much of my tank is filled. I really feel like NOAA has this plan, and then every night or every day I see you guys helping with that plan.
NOAA is the one that organizes all of it, figures out what kind of data they want to collect, how they want to collect it. So it's their show in a sense, but our role at Moody currently is just to be supportive in that manner. So we have what's called reciprocity. So all of our training mirrors their training. That way we can send out divers to assist at any point with whatever manner or scope of work that they are asking for.
Before I jumped in, we were told a rope line had been placed in the water to serve as a guide for the direction of our first dive.
This is called a Manta reel. It's got about 150 meters of line on it. We use it as a perimeter for our long-term monitoring site, but for this time we're going to use it as a directional heading.
While this trip would only last a few days, the work they're doing is decades in the making.
So we are heading down to the reef. Right now we're at East Flower Garden Banks and we're working on our long-term monitoring project. We're going to be doing repetitive photo stations. We have these pins in the reef that we go to every year. We have them on a map where we navigate to some of the same stations that have been in place for over 30 years, and it kind of acts like a time series. Tells the history of the reef, allows us to determine what the coral cover is in the major area.
The Moody Gardens team helped find the pins.
We call it pin hunting, so there are these photo stations that need to be photographed every single year, and we go around and find those. That way the photographer doesn't have to think about doing that. They can focus on the photos. We go around and mark those for them.
The picture must be taken with precision to ensure they can be matched to older images taken at the same spots.
I'm with Donovan French, who I was watching you dive today, and you're in charge of the photography for the repetitive photo stations. You had a really cool job. I felt like it was a hard job because you're carrying a huge camera with this long pole, and then you have to line it up perfectly to take this one photo. Explain to me what you're doing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of strength and finesse to it because it is a massive system. But we have our stations. I kind of got that pole there. I'm kind of coming up to it. I'm putting it on my site. We have both a compass and a bubble level to tell me, we want to orientate these photos in the same direction from year to year. So I'm facing north. I'm pulling up that camera so we're perfectly straight up and down. I'm looking at that bubble level, and then I take the photo. At that point, I have already kind of set my camera settings so everything's standard, and we kind of rinse and repeat from site to site.
So I think what people aren't going to realize until we tell them is that if it's not you, it's somebody else who's been doing this at certain sites for about 30 years, the exact same way, the exact same photo. What does that exact same position show you over a time span of 30 years?
These photo stations are important to us because we're tracking specific corals. And we can kind of look at them from year to year and see, this one has grown by X amount. We can also look, okay, this one has gotten diseased this year. We'll know when we see the photos next year, has it recovered, did it not recover? More kind of reef health questions like that. Due to climate stressors, the disease has become a little bit more prevalent because the corals are already somewhat stressed.
They know the water at the Flower Garden Banks is getting warmer, thanks to another long-term monitoring project.
My name is Ryan Hannum. I'm a NOAA researcher and diver. I'm the program lead for the Sanctuary's Water Quality Monitoring Program. And right now I'm working on getting one of our water quality sensors set up so that we can do a deployment on the next dive. This type of sensor we leave out here. It's a moored instrument, so it stays out on the sand bed. We leave these out for anywhere between 3 months to a year. So the one that's currently deployed, we deployed it here July of last year. So it's about almost a full year's time, off by a few days. But we're gonna bring that old one up. We're gonna swap it out with this new one right here. And hopefully it'll be out for another year collecting data for us. We have data series that run 30 years now. The first ones we deployed in the 90s.
Well, since you deployed these 30 years ago, what have you seen with the temperatures here at the flower gardens?
So we've seen an increase, a gradual one. We see a lot of fluctuation throughout the year, which was to be expected, but if you take a trend line from that, we're seeing that slow positive increase in temperature.
So this is the turbidity sensor here. The conductivity sensor, so the turbidity is the cloudiness. The salinity sensor or conductivity sensor is right here. It's this cell that goes through. And then the temperature sensor is also tucked behind this protective metal cage.
The sensor has a memory card and battery, and it's set to take a water sample every hour. But first, they had to get it to the installation site, 82 feet down.
So the dive before this one, we set that guideline out. So navigation is going to be easy for the team. They just have to worry about their gas consumption, making sure they don't get too tired.
Is this heavy?
Yeah.
Oh, it is, okay.
I'd say it's roughly about 35 pounds.
This is work. I mean, you're working in the water. Regular trips to the flower gardens are needed to collect the data and maintain the equipment for both long-term monitoring projects.
So I was taking down these cattle tags to mark our repetitive photo stations here. Oftentimes, we're just replacing this portion. Sometimes we're replacing the eyeball altogether, or sometimes we're just reinforcing the eyeball with the epoxy here. And to figure out where we're going, we use this map that lets us know all the numbers associated with the particular sites we're interested in.
The long-term projects are only a part of the work being done.
This is our random transect camera setup. So in addition to those repetitive photo stations that you were seeing with the really long camera setup, these ones we essentially select random locations around the reef and we take a photo transect. So we're making essentially a line of photographs that could be almost stitched together and capture that swath on the reef. Because they're random, they give us a better picture of what the reef is looking like on a whole versus those repetitive stations with tracking very specific coral colonies over time.
Among other projects on this trip, there are also people doing coral sampling and additional water testing. They're all working to save this place because it's vital to the health of our oceans and planet. And they want it to be here for generations to come.
Beautiful down there. You see why they say it's like the world's healthiest reef? Because it's just so expansive. There's hardly any gaps where you see any sand. And I just saw hundreds of fish, so it's pretty awesome. We went down to 74 feet for 24 minutes. And basically that was right on top of the coral. We saw a lionfish right away. There were a couple of large jellyfish, and parrotfish, and then a lot of fish that I need to learn the names of.
With one dive down, we're prepared to do it again to see even more of this conservation collaboration.
Where would Moody be without NOAA, and where would NOAA be without Moody? And that's again why that partnership is so important and really special, is that we really kind of can rely on each other for resources when necessary, and kind of know when to say, hey, look, you know, we need some help here, can you help out here, and being able to collaborate on projects and things like that. And it's not just any one person's responsibility to accomplish it, it's a team effort.
Still ahead, the threat lionfish pose to all other fish in the reef, and later, how an old oil rig became a thriving home for coral in the sanctuary. But first, did you know oyster reefs can be restored using oyster shells from restaurants? Moody Gardens staff have collected over 100 tons of shells since 2020 to help the Galveston Bay Foundation's oyster shell recycling program. To learn more and see a list of restaurants that are saving shells for oyster reef restoration, visit click2houston.com/conservation. Here at Moody Gardens, you can see some of the fish that are regularly spotted at the flower garden banks. On our trip, there were more fish than I could count. Fortunately, there was someone else on that trip who had that job.
Specifically, what I'm doing right now is I'm going to be doing a fish survey. So I am going to be taking my data sheet and my clipboard. I also have a reel in here, and we call these fish sticks. They give me sort of an orientation of how big the fish might be. And we size fish, we count fish, try to get a relative abundance in a specific area. And yeah, then we process all that data later at the lab.
How was it down there?
It was great, it was beautiful. We got 2 fish surveys done. Here's an example of what our fish data sheets look like afterwards. We write down all the different species and then bin them into different size categories. We tell a little bit about the reef up here.
While Kelly O'Connell counts and records the variety of fish at specific points on the reef, Marissa Nuttall was working on a project to track them. You got a really important job when it comes to the fish.
Yes, we're working on a study to put acoustic tags in the fish and track their movements in and around the sanctuary.
Nuttall was with NOAA when we met her first. She's continuing her work now with Texas A&M Galveston.
And what have you found with the fish movement here at the Flower Gardens?
So we have 2 different projects going on. One is looking at the larger movement scale, so looking across the banks where fish are moving across the sanctuary. With that, the fish that we've been tagging, we're starting to highlight areas that are potential multi-species spawning aggregations, so where fish are coming together to reproduce and spawn. So these are potentially really important sites to protect. And then we're also documenting other species coming into the sanctuary from other people who have done tagging work.
And while doing that, you've made a really incredible discovery.
Yeah, some of our partners have been tagging great white sharks, and using the technology to track these fish in the sanctuary, we've been able to track the movement of great whites into the flower garden banks.
When you say great white sharks, I know people all of a sudden they get like this with their eyes. Hey, tell me the story of how this came about, because I thought it was fascinating.
These sharks have been tagged typically off of the east coast of the US, one as far away as Nova Scotia from various research partners up there. But we have listening stations here at the sanctuary that are picking up any tagged animal that comes into the sanctuary. So these animals that have been tagged off the east coast in colder northern water have made their way south down the eastern seaboard, around Florida Keys, into the Gulf of Mexico, and now as far west out as the flower garden banks.
So has anyone told you what in the world would a great white shark be doing in the Gulf of Mexico with its warmer waters?
I know it's a fairly, I guess maybe it might be a misconception now that the great whites really like the colder water. The researchers that I've been talking to are suggesting that essentially because their populations are perhaps improving, we're now seeing them throughout their actual range, and so now we're seeing them more in the Gulf of Mexico simply because there's more of them, and so they're occurring in their natural ranges again.
But so far it's been documented, it's been 5, right? They found 5 that are tagged.
Yes, 5 tagged individuals that have made it from the East Coast into the Flower Garden Banks National Marine Sanctuary. Yeah, pretty incredible.
That is.
From sharks to pufferfish, a healthier reef supports a more vibrant array of fish. While variety is nice, there is one species of fish they want to see less of in the Gulf. Amid the coral and colorful fish, a predator lurks throughout the flower garden banks.
So like where Nemo is from is where lionfish are supposed to be. Our native fish here don't recognize lionfish as a threat. Our native fish don't have it in their brains to be afraid of a lionfish. And then our bigger grouper, snapper, shark species also don't have it in their brains that they can eat lionfish. So these guys basically get to just run around and eat everything they want, and nobody eats them. So it's really important that people like all of us get out here and do our part and remove them, especially in a sanctuary where other fish populations are affected. That's extremely important.
Lionfish were first spotted off the coast of South Florida in the mid-'80s. By the 2000s, they had spread up the eastern coast. The population expanded, eventually moving into the Gulf. It's a threat that's rapidly growing. Unchecked, lionfish devour native fish, putting those populations at risk. It is believed lionfish ended up in the waters where they didn't belong after being released from home aquariums. On our trip, they were on the most wanted list for both the researchers and commercial fishermen who supply lionfish to restaurants and grocery stores.
So we get these lionfish out of the water, and we have various research partners, Texas Parks and Wildlife, NOAA staff, that'll do all kinds of different things with this individual fish. They'll take fin clippings, they'll take gut content, they'll take the otoliths, or what we would think of as ear bones, and they'll use all of that in various different ways and do some really cool research and projects on lionfish. Yeah, you're good.
Each day, teams gathered their gear, suited up, jumped in to search for the striped underwater invaders. For the most part, they're working to remove lionfish from the reef. But this dive included a catch and release. After securing a lionfish, the NOAA team, including Marissa Nuttall, worked underwater, carefully measuring it, taking notes, and inserting a tracking device so they can study the fish's movements and behaviors. A successful operation celebrated as the lionfish was delicately released. While eliminating lionfish completely is not a reality, the more the team learns from both the fish they follow and the fish they remove, the more likely they are to uncover solutions to minimize the lionfish's impact on the reef. Back on the boat, they survey their haul, always with caution, because lionfish can sting.
Lionfish do have venomous spines. The venomous spines are those up here, located on the dorsal fin. Those down here, located on the pelvic fin. And these right here, located on what we call the anal fin.
If you're allergic to wasps, generally you're also allergic to them. It's way worse though. The sting on them lasts a couple days.
The team takes measurements.
Lionfish tend to max out at about 18 3/4 of an inch. They have been getting fatter. A 3 or 4 pound fish these days it's not unheard of.
And they collect samples.
We're taking fin clips to get genetic samples from these.
Sometimes you can look in their mouth. Oh, this guy's got some cool stuff in his mouth, guys.
Really?
Yeah. This guy was eating. So he can blow his mouth out to get really super big. Lionfish are in a family called suction feeders. So they can actually pull food into their mouth like the Death Star. Science people, please get in here. Don't let me use Death Star.
But it's true because they're invasive, right?
Yep, they are invasive.
I think that's what's so incredible about this trip. I mean, you have you have NOAA, you have
Parks and Wildlife.
Parks and Wildlife, you have the lionfish. I mean, it's just incredible how different this group is, but you're all working together, and in essence, you're working toward the same goal.
Right. We're all trying to make the environment better and more stable. We have to be active participants in fixing the damage that we have done. So we need to be proactive in trying to create better habitats that are more resilient in the future.
A more resilient future involves coral gardening in Galveston.
Each one of those polyps has its own mouth, so as those tentacles are out, that tells me it's ready to eat, it knows food's coming.
Still ahead, inside the coral lab at Moody Gardens. Plus,
we're working on deep water work as well for some of the Deepwater Horizon injuries that were caused by the oil spill.
The efforts to reduce the impact of the biggest oil spill in U.S. waters. But first, from the sea to the sky, Moody Gardens' work, led by the Galveston Island Nature Tourism Council and other local partners, resulted in Galveston receiving high flyer status as a Bird City, Texas community by Audubon, Texas, and Texas Parks and Wildlife. Moody Gardens also provides funding to support Ecology Project International's work at the Pacari Reserve in Costa Rica. There, they are working to save the rare agami heron and other species. Learn how you can help too on click2houston.com/conservation. You may be surprised to hear an old oil rig sits within the boundaries of the Flower Garden Bank's National Marine Sanctuary. It was in place before the sanctuary became a protected spot and continued to be in operation for several years after. Once it was decommissioned, though, questions were raised about what to do with it. The answer ended up being, use it. At the East Flower Garden Banks, more than 60 feet below the surface, sits what's left of oil platform HI-A389A, or High Island 389. In 2018, the top of the rig was removed.
The original plan was to completely remove that and take it out. And what we thought was this was going to be a removal, not just of a steel structure, but a lot of marine life. And why do we really want to remove that marine life? So we were able to convince the owner at that time to do the horizontal cut at 70 feet and preserve 70 feet to 410 feet. So that was accomplished while I was a member of the advisory council.
Jesse Kinselmo is a retired engineer with a love for scuba diving and photography. For more than 50 years, he's photographed reefs around the world. He was on the Flower Garden Bank Sanctuary Advisory Council when the boundaries of the sanctuary were expanded, and proudly says he led the effort to transform the High Island 389 rig into an artificial reef, leaving behind the marine life that had made the rig their home. I got to see what has made this a popular spot for scuba divers, as work was being done to hook up a new mooring line to the rig. Because this is a national marine sanctuary, ships and boats are not allowed to drop anchor here. It would damage the reefs, so they attach themselves to buoys. But those buoys attachments over time can break, like you see here. So one of the researchers actually invented a new way of doing this, so this never happens again.
The new moorings we're installing have a subsurface float that helps prevent the friction and the wear that prolong the life of these moorings. That's why we're out here doing the work.
Josh Harvey is a mooring buoy specialist. On this day, he walked the team through the installation of the new buoy and mooring line before the work underwater began. Through hand signs and elbow grease, they communicated and maneuvered the tools to get the job done, successfully installing a new line that will last longer. With expanded sanctuary boundaries and reliable mooring lines, the places for both recreational and scientific divers to explore is growing.
There's potential for expanding this scuba diving itinerary out here, and I think that's really cool. They understand that at Moody Gardens, but I think that's something that the general public should know. It's not just 3 places. There's a lot more to it than that.
While old oil rigs can benefit the ocean ecosystem, when things go wrong with active oil sites, it can be devastating. In 2010, 11 people lost their lives, and 770 square miles of the Gulf were impacted by the Deepwater Horizon explosion and oil spill. The oil damaged habitats deeper than most divers can go. The mesophotic, or middle light zone, is below recreational scuba diving limits. Even farther down is the deep benthic zone. Here there is no sunlight, and it's much colder. It's a part of the ocean that's harder to study, but that isn't stopping people from trying to save it.
I have the privilege of being the Director of Marine Operations here at Moody Gardens.
Jake Emmert leads a team of divers who work at Moody Gardens and in the Gulf. They're accomplishing even more through partnerships.
We have quietly done a very good job of assembling a partnership of all of the zoo and aquarium dive programs across the United States that have technical diving programs to be able to access these deeper areas of the Gulf that it takes maybe a decade or more to grow that skill set. And now we're on the stage of being able to contract vessels of opportunity to put teams of scientists, divers, physicians, and qualified personnel offshore.
That network of skilled divers led to Moody Gardens getting the call to help after the biggest oil spill to ever impact the waters off the United States.
Moody Gardens' role in the Deepwater Horizon spill, specifically the restoration, is to coordinate and conduct the civilian technical diving operations. This brings coral restoration down to 330 feet below the water's surface.
Restoration involves collecting coral samples and putting them in a safe laboratory environment where they can grow and reproduce before being returned to repopulate the reef. While propagating coral at depths that far below the surface had rarely been attempted before, Moody Gardens and NOAA have proved it's possible thanks to specially trained divers and technology.
With the Deepwater Horizon work, part of that program is doing both the technical diving, the civilian technical diving that we're a part of, as well as some remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs. And some of that work is actually tying those two parts together. Clearly, once you get into deeper water, ROVs are the only option. So we're working on developing some techniques that we can do with our hands that will then be able to pass off to the ROVs that they will be able to then do in deeper water as well.
Those corals that NOAA has in their lab are some of the ones that we collected this past summer from 200 feet. And it's really nice to see that they're healthy, doing well, and growing, and in most cases exceeding our expectations for how we keep them healthy.
Still ahead,
Our job is to be the ocean, which is a huge task.
the delicate job of caring for coral. Plus,
This is a coral core that's been drilled out of the Gulf of Mexico. And what's really fascinating about this is it's a lot like tree rings. Scientists are able to drill into this and look at the age and the health of the coral and discover so much more.
but first, helping our planet by reducing waste. Moody Gardens turns landscape debris and even carpentry waste into mulch used on their grounds. Filtered water from Galveston's water treatment plant is used for irrigation at the hotel and golf course. And even unused soap left by hotel guests is sent to an organization called Clean the World, which manufactures new soap bars to send to people around the world who need it. Stay with us. Garden in the Gulf, a reef rescue mission, continues next. One of the most spectacular sights at the Flower Gardens happens like clockwork every August. A mass coral spawning event takes place around the sanctuary about a week after the full moon. For several days, multiple species of star and brain corals release gametes, or reproductive cells, into the water. Eventually, the spawning leads to new coral life. While an impressive phenomenon, coral reefs around the world are still struggling. Fortunately, scientists like the ones at Moody Gardens have found a way to help grow coral gardens. Occasional trips are made out to the flower garden banks for research, but the work continues every day at Moody Gardens.
This is one of the few places where you'll actually get to see coral from the Flower Garden Banks National Marine Sanctuary, and it serves as a gene bank, so we're pretty excited to have it here.
Jake Emmert took us into the Moody Gardens Coral Lab.
What you're seeing are all these corals that are out of their natural habitat, out of the disease pathway where they can be healthy and survive for a long time. These corals are from the upper part of the reef, which is only about 60 to 70 feet deep, but that is the shallowest portion of the flower gardens.
While Flower Garden Banks coral is here now, the Coral Lab started in 2019 as a way to help Florida reefs, which were being ravaged by a mysterious illness known as stony coral tissue loss disease.
So Moody Gardens was fortunate to be able to answer the call. A lot of this work comes from the Florida Reef Tract and the rescue that was happening there. And so there have been many treatments, even some like amoxicillin to be used to try and treat these corals and help improve the outcome. The challenging part is that we don't know what it is. And so that's why places like this are so valuable, is because you can try different methods until you find something that works to better understand maybe what's causing the problem.
We were able to be one of the first facilities outside of Florida to hold these corals, and we were in that project for several years until we got kind of a call for help from NOAA for the flower garden banks. So when the flower garden banks, they started seeing some weird diseases that they were seeing on the reef. They were worried it was stony coral tissue loss disease. So we made the switch back in 2022, 2023. Once we were able to send out all of our Florida corals, we disinfected everything in this lab and reset it up for all of our flower garden corals.
Brooke Zurita is the senior biologist in charge of the Coral Lab. Fortunately, the disease in the Gulf wasn't stony coral tissue loss, but it still proved a need existed to harvest and protect and care for flower garden coral specimens as well.
Each one of those polyps has its own mouth, so as those tentacles are out, that tells me it's ready to eat, it knows food's coming. So in here, this is what we call shellfish diet. Basically, it is a blend of different algae that is put together. Specifically, this is a formula for crustaceans. This is what they use on like shrimp farms and things like that to feed. But not only does it have a lot of different algae in it, which are great for our corals, it also has some nutrition that's been added into it, like vitamins and amino acids and that kind of thing. Since these guys are in an isolated system, we want to make sure that we're giving them plenty of nutrition.
Is that the smell?
Yes, that's the smell.
So what is that smell?
That's algae.
That's the smell of
That's
algae?
the smell of the algae, yes. So
Okay.
it is a little strong. Like I said, it is a blend of 5 different algae, which is why it's this nice, beautiful brown color. But like I said, these guys will eat everything and anything they can. So all I'm going to do is we use our fancy dancy turkey basters. And so I just target right over our coral and kind of create a little bit of a mist around. And you can actually see those polyps closing. That means that coral is eating. So anything that it can catch, it will close up. You'll see all those tentacles are starting to retract. It's starting to eat. Some of the ones that didn't get any food, you can see they're actually getting bigger and their tentacles are coming out even more. So they're ready for some food as well. So I'll go ahead and feed this other side. The nice thing about corals is because they are colonial, or they live in this colony together, I don't have to worry about feeding every single polyp because they do share nutrition across the entire colony. So as long as most of them get some food, it will be plenty of food for everybody else in that colony.
When coral in their care show signs of illness or stress, they're moved to a different tank for additional monitoring.
If we notice something off, that could be they haven't opened their polyps in a few days, they're not responding to food very well, they have some kind of tissue loss, we will move them out of their system into our hospital tank, which is what this tank is right here.
So what's a more interesting job, what you do here or the people who feed the penguins?
I think what I do, honestly, because the one really cool thing about working with corals, and I work with corals as well as jellyfish, which are not the most charismatic animals. None of them have any brains, so they don't really know we're there. But because of that, we get to see these behaviors that not a lot of people get to see. We are in charge of every aspect of these animals' lives. So if you think about these animals living in the ocean provides them everything. So that's what our job is. Our job is to be the ocean, which is a huge task.
And that is the ultimate goal with the area that we're in right now, is to keep these animals as healthy as they can be so that we're successful for restoration efforts.
Coral reefs provide so much for humans, not just ecologically, but also economically. And being able to help them have a better life out in the wild is why we all come to work. So I think I have the coolest job.
The success of coral labs like the one here at Moody Gardens is a credit to the work that's been done throughout the years. Now, while there's more to learn from new coral, there's even more to uncover from coral that's been around for decades or even centuries.
This looks like it's the Orbicella species that they drilled into.
Amy Wagner was one of the academic partners on our trip to the flower gardens.
What we like to do is collect some modern seawater data, because as the coral is growing, right, it's taking at what's in the seawater and it's putting it into its skeleton. This core right here probably represents about 40 to 50 years worth of ocean record.
Much like a tree, the rings in the core of a coral structure tell a story. Some samples are much older.
We can get back into the mid-1600s to look at what the Gulf of Mexico ocean conditions were, 400 years ago.
Elements within the rings also coincide with current events.
A colleague of mine at LSU and her student, they were analyzing the trace elements, the geochemistry. So they were looking at the amount of barium in the coral skeletal material. Barium is a kind of a byproduct of the barite that they use in the oil drilling platforms. And so if there's a lot of drilling, there's this record showing that you see more barium in the skeleton.
Yeah. And when atomic bombs were used in World War II, there's a record of that too.
We see a radiocarbon peak at that time period.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's just amazing how much something like this can tell us about the environment.
So people will see this and say, hey, I thought we were out here protecting the oceans, but here you've pulled out this 2-foot slab of coral. Tell me why this is okay to have this.
No, I think that's a great question, because it is something that a lot of people ask about. We do it very carefully. We take this out of the sort of the central part of the coral head. We do this by trying not to touch the rest of the coral. We kind of hover over it and drill into it. When we're done, what we do is we sort of put some fill into that hole, and then we make sure to cap it. It prevents any of those like boring organisms, those things to get into that hole that would sort of bore into the skeletal material and weaken it. And then it also creates a pathway for the top layer of the coral to just grow right back over it. This one he did collect dead, right? So you can tell there wasn't a live tissue layer on this. You still probably want to cap it because you don't want those organisms to bore into the rest of it.
Two different ways to get these.
Right. We do our very best to not harm any other part of the reef when we're collecting these samples because we know how important it is.
Still ahead.
We want to see our partnerships and our relationships in the community as strong as they can be and strengthened over time.
Spreading the word about this Reef Rescue Mission and why it's important for all of us. But first, Moody Gardens recycles paper, plastic, and even electronics. Guests can recycle old cell phones, tablets, and even digital cameras in an eco-cell box in the visitor center. And at Moody Gardens restaurants, you'll be served sustainable seafood. They're an active partner of the Monterey Bay Aquarium's Seafood Watch. To find out how you can make sure you're buying seafood that was sourced responsibly, visit click2houston.com/conservation. Once a month, Moody Gardens hosts Sanctuary Saturdays. On those days, staff from the Flower Garden Bank's National Marine Sanctuary are on hand to share their work with guests. It's all part of Moody Gardens' mission of inspiring conservation through education, whether you come as a volunteer or become a Moody Gardens member, and visit the pyramids and theaters here regularly to learn about nature. You are supporting Moody Gardens' work to advance conservation and research.
Let's check our primaries. Orally inflate your wing.
Like many on our trip, Chris Ledford's desire to save the flower gardens grew from a fascination with every part of the reef.
The part that got me into that side of things was they're just like aliens on our own planet. These are animals that look like rocks, they look like plants, they've got their whole little system going on, and it's like watching an octopus crawl along the reef. You're looking at that like, that thing is from outer space. These are like the weirdest, coolest animals you've ever seen, but you have to know they exist.
That's coral reefs. I mean, they comprise a ton of our planet's biodiversity. They contribute so many things to our planet, and we often take them for granted. So it's good to just remind ourselves that we want these things healthy and we want them well taken care of.
Coral reefs are needed for the health of our ocean, our air, our economy, and even our safety, as they can act as a barrier during hurricanes.
We want to make sure that we have good management in place of these marine resources so that they can continue to benefit us, whether it's food on our plate or oxygen that we breathe. Our oceans, we forget that the air we breathe, the oxygen we breathe, the majority of it comes from our planet's oceans.
As they focused on the health of the reefs, Moody Gardens also used our trip to train members of their team.
Last summer, Natasha and Jackson came out. Those are two of our in-house dive officers. They were working on their American Academy of Underwater Sciences scientific diver rating. So we're going to be able to start using them to come out into the field and do field research in addition to their duties here at the aquarium of running the regular daily operations.
Training the next generation of conservation divers is important, especially as NOAA faces additional cuts to staffing and funding. It's not fully known the impact those cuts will have on the flower garden banks, but Moody Gardens' support remains.
Moody Gardens always will stand to support our federal partners. We've been working with them and helping them a long time. We're privileged to be able to participate and help their projects. So if they have a need for help, we're going to step up in any way that we can.
That collaboration may be a vital part of keeping the flower garden banks alive.
Collaboration is really important, and getting all these people on the same boat really helps kind of break down any communication barriers you may have. gives you an opportunity to meet people that you may have only corresponded with via email or phone call. So it really kind of really helps drive kind of more than just a relationship, but a friendship amongst all of these people.
While roles may change, the mission is constant. Explore, protect, and share the story of the Flower Garden Banks National Marine Sanctuary with as many people as possible.
I really think this place, the Flower Garden Banks National Marine Sanctuary, is a safe haven for wild corals. And everything here is completely natural. It is the healthiest coral reef in this part of the world and worthy of our protection and our appreciation.
Since the boundaries of the sanctuary were expanded in 2021, there's even more ground to cover and solutions to discover that could save reefs around the world.
I'm personally very excited to go down and start doing surveys in that area and start seeing what is in the 75% of the sanctuary that we can't normally get to.
Everybody here is like an expert diver. I mean, literally an expert diver. And then you're stuck with the one, I mean, novice. How tough was that on this trip?
I wouldn't call you a novice. There's definitely newer divers that would fit that category. I really love doing science underwater. I really love doing the work underwater. But at the same time, it's really humbling to have you out here and being able to help share that story.
I hope people are excited. I hope people have a sense of wonder because the work that we're doing is very meaningful. Moody Gardens supports everybody going out to do this work. And the resources it takes to put people 100 miles offshore, as you now know, it takes time and support. So folks are getting a glimpse of what's really going on out there, how everybody is working together to make the world a better place. And I also just want to give some acknowledgement to the team here, the dive operations team at Moody Gardens. We have been able to do tremendous work through the support of this institution for almost a decade. We love coming to work. We love this job. We love working with the people in our community, and we love being able to help.
Inspiring more people to get out there and get into marine science and start paying attention to and caring for the environment would be a fantastic outcome.
Thank you for letting us tell this story. We hope that it means something to folks because we want to keep going.
As you've seen throughout the past hour, a trip to Moody Gardens is about more than just a fun family outing. It's an investment in the work being done to protect our oceans and planet. For more on the many ways Moody Gardens supports conservation and how you can too, visit click2houston.com/conservation. For now, from all of us at KPRC2 and Moody Gardens, thank you for joining us for Garden in the Gulf, a Reef Rescue Mission. How you feeling?
Hot. Once we get in the water, it'll be nice. Just make it a nice snug fit. Hold on. I think this is the hardest I've ever worked. Yeah. Just use stand up. But this just squeeze it in?
Yeah, just kind of give it a wiggle.
No, it doesn't want to fit anymore. Let me try this a different way. Boy, it does not want to fit.
Bummer.
So do we need to adjust? Here is a small sample of some of their work that they're doing here at the Flower Gardens. And there it is. It actually took forever to do.
It's not easy.
That was great until the end. That was great until I fell.